The Brazilian army started the eviction of the so-called Bolsonarista camps by orders of the Supreme Court, and the police authorities confirmed more than 300 arrests. In Bolivia, organized communities joined the plurinational government against those who have promoted violence, as the unions will sue the Santa Cruz Civic Committee. And also, Russia confirms that southern Soledar has been liberated in its advance to conquer Bakhmut. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. On Monday, the Brazilian army has started the eviction of the so-called Bolsonarista camps by orders of the Supreme Court. More than 300 detainees have been confirmed by the police authorities. Judge Alexandre de Moraes issued the court order in the early hours of Monday morning. His instructions specifies that nothing justifies the existence of these camps, which he described as the terrorist centers that are financed and supported by civilian and military authorities. In a totally subversive and anti-constitutional manner, the magistrate's order also warns that the commanders and the high-ranking military and police officers will be brought to justice if they persist in the existence of these camps. In Brazil, President Lula da Silva decreed turning Brasilia's security over to the federal government after a group of Jair Bolsonaro's supporters stormed the Planalto Palace and other state institutions. In relation to the events, the governor removed former Bolsonarista Minister Anderson Torres from the command of the Secretariat of Public Security of the Federal District, and an arrest warrant has been issued against him. The facilities seized included also the Congress and the Palace of the Supreme Federal Court. Authorities report that security forces recovered control of all the three buildings affected. Police reports over 150 people or 300 people arrested so far. President Lula strongly rejected the actions of the former President Jair Bolsonaro and his followers, while requesting exemplary measures against all the officials involved in the incidents.
There was some kind of incompetence from the people in charge of taking care of federal welfare. You're going to watch the images. They were guiding people in that march. The 30th, in my inauguration, the day before, Brasilia military police were guiding these vandals, and they did nothing to ensure security. Those police officers are not going to escape with impunity.
Lula also stressed the outrage caused by these vandals and emphasized the government needs to make an example of them to protect the state and its institutions.
To be able to take care of the institutional figure of a federal district, and we'll be able to ensure that this doesn't happen again. We need to make an example of these people, and they need to be punished, so no one ever dares soiling the national flag and taking it to Brazilian institutions to say that they are Bolsonaro sympathizers. This had never happened in this country, not even in the 60s, that a group would go and commit such acts.
And reacting to these events, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros took to Twitter to say Venezuela categorically rejects the violence generated by Bolsonaro's neo-fascist groups that assaulted the democratic institutions of Brazil. The head of state said, "Our support for President Lula da Silva and the Brazilian people, who will surely mobilize in defense of peace and its president." Also on Twitter, Colombian President Gustavo Petro wrote, "All my solidarity to President Lula and to the people of Brazil. Fascism decides to strike. The right wing has not been able to maintain the pact of non-violence. Thus must urgently meet if it wants to continue to exist as an institution and implement the democratic charter." And the president of Cuba, Miguel Mario Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, also reacted on Twitter. The head of state said, we strongly condemned the violent and undemocratic acts that occur in Brazil with the aim of generating chaos and disrespecting the popular will expressed with the election of President Lula. We express all our support and solidarity to President Lula da Silva and his government. In Mexico, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador wrote on Twitter, "Reprehensible and undemocratic the coup attempt by the conservatives in Brazil, encouraged by the oligarchic power leadership, their spokespersons and fanatics. President Lula is not alone. He has the support of the progressive forces of his country, Mexico, the American continent, and the world." And Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez stated that as president of CELAC and Mercosur, he calls on member countries to unite in this unacceptable anti-democratic reaction that tries to impose itself in Brazil. Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news, updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Sunday in Bolivia, organized communities joined the exercise of justice initiated by the plurinational government against those who have promoted violence. The unions will sue the Santa Cruz Civic Committee. The executive of the Trade Union Confederation of Retailers of Bolivia will file a popular action against the Confederation and its leader, Rómulo Calvo, for promoting strikes, blockades, and marches. The normality seen in Santa Cruz is the symptom, according to the union members, of a society that supports measures against those who violate the right to work, health, and education, and for this reason, they permanently attack peace. For this reason, they will go to court. And also on Sunday, Bolivian National Direction of the Penitentiary Regime informed that it is preparing a report for the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights related to the detention of Luis Fernando Camacho. The national director of the entity, Juan Carlos Limpias, reported that after receiving the request from the regional body, they will delay a report on the requirements raised. Through a precautionary measure, which is a protection mechanism of the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, the Bolivian state will provide detailed information certifying that they respect the rights and guarantees of Luis Fernando Camacho, arrested for his participation in the 2019 coup d'etat. In Haiti, health authorities reported at least 452 cholera deaths since the beginning of the new outbreak in October 2022. According to the latest official report, health authorities have confirmed 1,570 active cases to date, while more than 22,000 cases have yet to be verified. The country has more than 18,000 hospitalized patients with symptoms, mostly young people and children between the ages of 1 and 20. Experts warn that the serious health problem comes hand in hand with major food crisis. In this regard, the Prime Minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, announced that the country will begin to receive financial support from the International Monetary Fund to respond to this emergency. And the president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, reiterated to the United States the need to comply with the migration agreements and decade is the main cause of the immigration phenomenon in the island. The Cuban president recalled that his government has repeatedly warned the United States about the risks of encouraging irregular immigration, with the Cuban Adjustment Law in force and the privileged and politically motivated treatment received by the Cubans who arrived in the U.S. territory or at its border. He also stressed that the U.S. blockade against the island constitutes the main obstacle to the development of Cuba, which deteriorates the standard of living of the Cuban people, becoming, in addition, the main cause of migration. Diaz-Canel considered that a normal migratory relationship between both countries will contribute to drastically reduce irregular migratory flows and their consequences, which he affirmed will only be achieved with the integral fulfillment of the agreements signed with the United States. And the railway workers in the United Kingdom continued with the protest actions on Saturday after several days of strike by the country's transport workers. The strike suspended the operation of British railway services by more than 80%, closing most of Wales, Scotland. One of the largest unions in the United Kingdom said that on January 23rd, the ambulance staff will join the protest actions to demand better salaries. The United Kingdom government assured that it plans to introduce legislation in order to allow public services operate with a minimum level of security during strikes. In recent months, the United Kingdom has suffered one of its worst waves of strikes, after more than a decade without wage increases and an inflation increase of more than 10%. The German government urged the population to continue carrying out energy-saving measures. Germany's Federal Network Agency claimed that the country has sufficient supplies for the rest of winter season. They also highlighted that the nation used 14% less gas than in 2021, mainly due to the population's energy-saving efforts. The gas agency warned that saving measures should continue because at the end of this winter season, storage tanks will have about 50% of their reserve, and the next season could be colder. It also stated that China's consumption of gas could recover by increasing world demand and prices. Besides, it warns that damage to Europe's gas infrastructure could endanger the region. In France, multiple demonstrations took to the streets of Paris and other cities to demand wage adjustments in the face of rising inflation. On Sunday, groups of citizens mobilized under the slogan for social, fiscal and climate justice to protest against the policies of the French President Emmanuel Macron, the increase in inflation and the rise of the cost of living. The demonstrators are also rejecting the government's pension reform, the most rejected point of which is the extension of the retirement age from 62 to 64 or 65. Likewise, they denounced the invisibilization of these protests by the Western media. And the Secretary General of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, said on Sunday that he expects Sweden and Finland to join the alliance in 2023. The NATO Secretary General affirmed that the signing of both countries to the treaty will happen in 2023, although he said that he could not guarantee the exact moment in which this will happen. Stoltenberg, who is attending a security conference in Sweden, affirmed that although it has not yet occurred and although he would like the process of acceptance of both countries to be completed as soon as possible, this has been the fastest process in the modern history of the organization. The Alliance's Secretary General also reminded that the decision on the entry of Sweden and Finland depends on the parliaments of Turkey and Hungary, which have not yet ratified their signing.
Will not give the exact date because, of course, it has to be a sovereign decision of the Turkish parliament and, for that matter, of the Hungarian parliament because they have not yet ratified. However, I will continue working to achieve ratification in those two parliaments as well.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Donetsk authorities confirmed their troops seized control of the town of Bakhmutsk, essential for the control of Bakhmut. Russian forces shared a message through Telegram, noting they have liberated the territory south of Soledar. For Kiev, Bakhmut is a symbol of everything they have promised to Western countries. For Moscow, it is another step forward in what the authorities called a denazification operation. Whatever the version or the facts confirm that Bakhmut became the center of heavy fighting. The government of China will adjust COVID-19 controls and surveillance with the aim of providing better scientific and technological support for the prevention and control of the disease. According to the head of the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Wu Zhongyu, the government downgraded the COVID-19 situation from Class A to Class B due to the good progress and improvement in the pandemic response. The official detailed that a combined statistical method was adopted to carry out a relatively accurate, comprehensive assessment of the outbreak of this disease, its incidence, intensity, and trend. This method, which has also been adopted by several countries around the world in recent years, seeks to visualize the overall COVID-19 situation through sampling.
We have adopted a combined statistical method to carry out a comprehensive assessment of the outbreak and epidemic development in a relatively accurate way, including incidence, intensity, trend, and timing, as well as the effect of prevention and control. In fact, this method has already been adopted by the United States, Europe, and other countries around the world in recent years to reflect the overall COVID-19 situation by sampling.
We remain in China. There, a truck lost control, causing an accident that left 19 people dead and 22 injured in Jiangxi province. Local media informed about a terrible traffic accident in Nanshan County. So far, the accident caused 19 fatalities and 22 injured. Authorities report that the circumstances that produced the incident are under thorough investigation by the relevant security forces. The accident occurred in the early hours of the morning when a truck ran over a funeral procession almost completely. The authorities appeal to the awareness of drivers in this season. Now we move on to other topics. In the United States, more than 500,000 people remain without power due to a storm in the northern part of California. According to the authorities, a total of 556,374 people are without power as of Thursday, January the 5th. This due to bad weather, heavy snowfalls, rains, and floods following the arrival of a storm. The U.S. West Coast was also hit since December 27th by a snowstorm, killing a 2-year-old boy in Sonoma County and causing damage to infrastructure due to downed trees. Authorities advise citizens to take the necessary precautions while work continues to restore power. And a severe cold wave hit New Delhi on Sunday. It registered a minimum temperature of 1.9 degrees Celsius, the lowest since January 2021. According to the South Asian nation's meteorological department, a dense blanket of fog covered northwest India and the bordering areas of central and eastern India. This affected the movement of road, rail, and air traffic. Flights scheduled for Sunday morning were delayed, as well as rail travel due to the blinding fog. Experts warn that the cold conditions will persist in the northwest parts of the country until January the 10th. At least 40 people were killed and dozens injured in a bus crash in central Senegal, the country's president said on Sunday. President Macky Sall tweeted that the collision happened in Guinea village in the Kaffrine region at about 3:30 a.m. He declared 3 days of mourning starting on Monday, and he will hold an interministerial council to discuss road safety measures. At least 78 people were injured, some of them seriously. Images of the crash show the damaged buses and also rammed into each other and a trail of debris along the road. And more than 10,000 people gathered in Tel Aviv, the capital of Israel, to protest against the new far-right cabinet of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The demonstrators repudiated what they have described as a coup d'etat against the judiciary based on a reform plan that includes a measure that allows the annulment of Supreme Court decisions on the repeal of the loss of cabinet's decisions, counting only on the votes of a simple majority. According to the parliamentarians and the leftist movements that call for the protest, if this reform is approved, the executive could exercise control over the judiciary. On Sunday, Iran announced a big jump in exports. Office said its exports to Saudi Arabia have increased by $15 million between February and October 2022. Likewise, the customs body stressed that this is the highest volume since the two countries froze diplomatic relations in 2016. According to the report, iron and steel ingots accounted for 96.5% of all exports from both countries during that time. Iran stressed the importance of Iraq's efforts as a mediator in the rapprochement with Saudi Arabia. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.